In the untamed Wyoming Territory of 1875, Sarah Mitchell clutches her grandmother's locket, the last piece of her murdered husband's inheritance. 6 months pregnant and alone, she knows the outlaws won't stop until they claim what they believe is rightfully theirs. The ranch, the gold mine deeds, her very life, all hang by a thread as their horses' hoofbeats echo closer each night. But fate has other plans. From the mist of dawn emerges Running Wolf, a Cheyenne warrior whose own path of redemption leads straight to her door. In his eyes she sees not just strength, but something her world has forgotten: honor. As he raises his rifle against her pursuers, one question remains. In a land where survival means choosing sides, can two souls from different worlds forge a future worth fighting for? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dawn painted the Wyoming sky in watercolor strokes of pink and gold as Sarah Mitchell's fingers worked the stubborn soil of her small garden. The morning air bit sharp and clean, carrying winter's last whispers even as spring struggled to take hold. Her back ached as she straightened, one hand instinctively cradling her swollen belly, while the other gripped the worn handle of her gardening trowel. Inside her apron pocket, the folded land deed crackled with each movement. The brown bloodstain at its corner had dried months ago, but Sarah still saw it fresh whenever she closed her eyes. James's blood, her husband's final mark on the document that had brought them west with such hope. A meadowlark's song pierced the morning quiet, making her start. These days, every unexpected sound sent her heart racing. She scanned the tree line that bordered her property, searching for shadows that shouldn't be there. The outlaws had grown bolder since James's death, no longer bothering to hide their presence. Just yesterday, she'd found fresh hoofprints by the creek, too close to the house for comfort. Sarah pushed herself to her feet, using the rough cabin wall for support. 6 months pregnant, and every day brought new challenges to what used to be simple tasks. James should have been here for this, should have been the one feeling their child kick for the first time, should have. The sound of approaching horses froze her in place. 3 riders emerged from the morning mist, their shapes taking form like specters given flesh. Sarah's hand moved to the small of her back, where James's Colt revolver rode in a hidden pocket of her skirts. 5 shots left in the cylinder. She'd used the 6th 2 weeks ago, warning off a coyote that had been eyeing her chickens. Mrs. Mitchell? The lead rider called out, his voice carrying false cheer. Beautiful morning for gardening. Marcus Wade, the man who'd offered to buy their land for a pittance just days before James's accident. He tipped his hat now, all gentleman manners stretched thin over predatory intent. This is private property, Mr. Wade. Sarah's voice carried stronger than she felt, years of finishing school lending her words an authority she prayed they couldn't see through. Wade dismounted, his spurs jingling with each deliberate step toward her garden. His companions remained mounted, hands resting too casually near their holsters. Now, Mrs. Mitchell, is that any way to greet concerned neighbors? We heard rumors of indigenous warriors spotted in the area. Dangerous times for a woman alone. His boot crushed one of her newly planted tomato seedlings. Might be safer to reconsider my offer. Sarah's fingers brushed the handle of James's revolver. My answer hasn't changed. Wade's friendly mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and ancient as a snake's eyes. Your husband was stubborn too. Look where that got him. The threat hung in the air between them, clear as mountain water. Sarah felt her child move within her, a reminder of everything she had to lose and everything she had to protect. I think you should leave now. She didn't draw the revolver, not yet, but her stance shifted just enough to let Wade know it was there. He studied her for a long moment, then laughed. The sound held no humor. You can't stay awake forever, Mrs. Mitchell. Accidents happen, especially out here in the wild. No law for 50 miles. No one to hear a widow scream. Wade turned back to his horse, but paused. 1 week. Then my offer. It drops to half. If you're still alive to consider it. The riders departed as they'd come, fading into the morning mist like bad dreams. Only the crushed seedling and the churned earth of their horses' hooves proved they'd been real at all. Sarah waited until she was sure they were gone before letting her shoulders sag. Her hand shook as she withdrew the land deed from her pocket, James's blood a stark reminder of the price already paid. The part Wade didn't know, couldn't know, was hidden beneath that bloodstain. Survey marks pointing to a gold vein that would make the ranch's value look like pocket change. Movement caught her eye. A shadow detaching itself from the trees. Her heart leaped until she made out the distinctive shape. A lone figure on horseback, too far to make out clearly, but something in its bearing spoke of power and grace that Wade and his men could never match. The figure raised a hand, either in greeting or warning, then melted back into the forest. Sarah pressed her hand against her grandmother's locket, watching the spot where the mysterious rider had stood. For the first time since James's death, she felt something other than fear. She felt watched, protected, and that somehow made her more afraid than ever. The broken peace pipe lay in the dust between them, its sudden appearance marking the moment everything changed. Sarah had been gathering kindling near the creek when she heard it, the distinctive warning rattle that turned her blood to ice. The snake, coiled not 3 feet away, raised its diamond-shaped head as she stood frozen in place. Time stretched like molasses. Each breath seemed to take an eternity. The snake's eyes held hers, ancient and unblinking. Her hand moved slowly toward the revolver in her skirts, knowing she'd never reach it in time. The arrow struck so fast, she didn't register its passage until the snake lay pinned to the earth, its rattle silenced mid-shake. Only then did she hear the approaching hoofbeats. He emerged from the trees like a spirit made flesh, his paint horse moving with liquid grace. The man sat tall in his saddle, proud features set in lines of quiet strength. His clothing mixed traditional Cheyenne garments with what looked like cavalry trousers, suggesting a foot in both worlds. A bow rested easily in his hands, another arrow already nocked. "You should watch where you step," he said, his English clear but accented. "The snake people wake hungry in spring." Sarah's heart thundered in her chest, fear of the snake transforming into a different kind of tension. She'd heard stories of the local tribes, some peaceful, others not. The broken peace pipe she'd found last week while tending her garden had seemed an omen, though of what she wasn't sure. "Thank you," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm Sarah Mitchell." He dismounted in one fluid motion, moving with the easy confidence of a warrior. Up close she could see the scars that marked his face, old wounds that spoke of battles survived. His eyes, though, held something unexpected, compassion. "I know who you are," he said, retrieving his arrow from the snake's body. "The widow who refuses to leave." "You've been watching me." It wasn't a question. She remembered the shadow at the tree line, the sense of being guarded. "I watch all who enter these lands." He cleaned the arrow with practiced motions. "The men who threaten you, they are Wasiku, white men with snake hearts. Wade and his gang." Sarah's hand drifted to her belly protectively. "They killed my husband." The warrior's expression darkened. "I know. I found his body by the creek. Gave him proper burial rites when your people's lawmen would not come." The revelation staggered her. All these months, she'd wondered about James's final resting place. Wade's men had denied any knowledge, and the nearest sheriff had been too deep in Wade's pocket to investigate. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I am called Running Wolf." He touched the medicine bag at his belt, a gesture that seemed unconscious. "My people once claimed these valleys as hunting grounds. Now we watch as your people build fences and draw lines on paper." Sarah stepped closer, drawn by something in his voice. "Yet you saved me." Honor knows no boundaries. Running Wolf's gaze met hers directly. "Your husband died with courage, fighting 3 men alone. Such bravery deserves respect, and his widow deserves protection." A breeze stirred the grass around them, carrying the sweet scent of wild sage. In the distance, thunder rumbled. A spring storm approaching from the mountains. Wade will return, Sarah said, with more men. I know. Running Wolf mounted his horse in one smooth motion. That is why I will stay. I don't need... You carry a child. His tone brooked no argument. And you carry something else, something that makes those men's eyes shine with greed. Sarah's hand went to her apron pocket, where the blood-stained deed lay hidden. How did you... I have watched long enough to see the truth. He turned his horse toward the tree line. Rest tonight, I will keep watch. Before she could protest further, he vanished into the gathering dusk, leaving Sarah alone with the dead snake, and more questions than answers. She retrieved the broken peace pipe from where it had fallen, its carved surface smooth against her palm. Perhaps it was an omen after all, not of peace shattered, but of new alliances formed in desperate times. Thunder rolled closer as she made her way back to the cabin, the weight of Running Wolf's promise settling around her shoulders like a blanket. For the first time since James's death, she felt something dangerous kindle in her chest. Hope. Sarah woke to the scent of wood smoke and sage. Morning light filtered through her cabin's window, carrying with it an unfamiliar aroma, not her usual coffee, but something earthier, more complex. She reached instinctively for James's revolver before remembering the events of yesterday. Outside, Running Wolf crouched by a small fire, stirring something in a battered tin cup. He acknowledged her emergence with a slight nod, his attention never fully leaving the tree line. "Medicine tea?" he said, offering the cup. "Good for the child." Sarah hesitated. Trust came harder than gratitude. "Your husband's child grows within you," Running Wolf said quietly. "I have sworn to protect both. I would not harm either." The tea's steam carried memories of wild places. Sarah took the cup, her fingers brushing his briefly. The liquid was bitter but oddly comforting, warming her from within. "There were riders in the night," he continued. "2 men. They watched but did not approach. Wade's scouts." Sarah's hand tightened on the cup. "They're planning something." "Yes." Running Wolf stood, his movements fluid despite a night of vigilance. "They will test us first, small attacks to probe our defenses." Our defenses? The word felt strange on her tongue. Yesterday she had been alone. Now, Running Wolf reached into his medicine bag, withdrawing a small leather pouch decorated with intricate beadwork. "For protection," he said, offering it to her. "My grandmother's craft. She was known for her medicine." Sarah accepted the pouch, feeling its weight, stones perhaps, or dried herbs. "I don't understand. Why help me? Your people owe me nothing." "My people understand honor and revenge." His eyes darkened with memory. "Wade's men don't just threaten you. They have killed many, both white and Cheyenne. They poison the land with their greed." A shot cracked through the morning air. The cup shattered in Sarah's hands, tea spattering her skirts. Running Wolf moved like lightning, pulling her behind the cabin's stone chimney as 2 more bullets struck wood. 3 riders, he said calmly, bow already in hand. "Coming from the east." 4, Sarah corrected, drawing James's revolver. "One's trying to circle behind us through the creek bed." Running Wolf's eyebrows rose slightly. "You have a warrior's eyes. I have a survivor's eyes." Sarah checked her ammunition. 5 shots. "Wade's testing us like you said." A horse whinnied in pain, Running Wolf's arrow finding its mark. Cursing erupted from the trees, followed by the thunder of retreating hooves. But the 4th rider was still moving through the creek bed, using the sound of water to mask his approach. Sarah closed her eyes, remembering James's lessons. Wait for the sound of stones shifting under horses' hooves. "Wait. There." Her shot echoed across the property, a cry of pain, then more cursing. The 4th rider emerged from the creek bed at a gallop, clutching his shoulder as he fled. Silence fell, broken only by the morning birds resuming their songs. Sarah's hands shook as she lowered the revolver, the medicine pouch pressed against her palm, its beadwork catching the sunlight. "You shoot well," Running Wolf said, returning his arrow to its quiver. James taught me. Said a woman alone needs to... Pain lanced through her abdomen, sharp and sudden. Sarah gasped, doubling over. Running Wolf caught her before she could fall, his strength steady and sure. The child protests the excitement, he said, helping her to a bench by the cabin door. Rest. I will check the property's boundaries. They'll be back. Yes. He touched the medicine pouch in her hand. But you are not alone now. The pouch carries my grandmother's prayers. They will watch over you when I cannot. Sarah looked up at him. This warrior who had appointed himself her guardian. This man who bridged two worlds. Why do I trust you? She whispered, more to herself than to him. Running Wolf's expression softened. Perhaps because you see in me what I see in you. Someone who has lost much but refuses to be broken by it. He moved away to check the property. Boo, ready. Every line of him speaking of vigilance and capability. Sarah pressed the medicine pouch to her chest, feeling her child move beneath her heart. The morning's attack had proved what she'd feared. Wade was done waiting, but it had proved something else too. She wasn't alone anymore. For better or worse, her fate had become entwined with Running Wolf's. As she watched him patrol her boundaries, Sarah realized that for the first time since James's death, she felt something besides fear and grief. She felt protected, and something more, something she wasn't ready to name yet. The medicine pouch warmed against her skin as if responding to her thoughts. Perhaps Running Wolf's grandmother's prayers were already at work, weaving a shield of hope around her and her unborn child, or perhaps the real medicine was simply knowing that someone cared enough to stand between her and harm's way. Either way, Sarah knew that everything had changed. The question was whether she was ready for where that change might lead. Evening painted the mountains purple as Sarah watched Running Wolf tend to his horse. He moved with practiced grace, murmuring words in Cheyenne that made the paint horse's ears twitch forward attentively. Behind him, propped against a fallen log, rested his warrior shield, a round creation of hardened buffalo hide, decorated with intricate symbols and hanging feathers. Each mark tells a story, Running Wolf said without turning, sensing her curiosity. Each feather carries a memory. Sarah approached slowly, drawn by the artistry of the piece. Geometric patterns radiated from the center like a sunburst, but it was the darker marks that caught her eye, spots where paint had been deliberately scratched away, leaving scars in the design. These marks, she said softly, they're not decorative, are they? Running Wolf's hands stilled on his horse's flank. No, each represents a fallen brother, family, friends. His voice carried the weight of mountains. My people. He moved to the shield, fingers tracing one particular scratch mark. This one was my wife, Morning Star, and our son. Sarah's breath caught. Wade's men. Different Waziku. Same greed. Running Wolf's eyes held shadows deeper than the gathering. Dusk. They wanted our hunting grounds. When we refused to leave, they came at night. Burnt our lodges, shot anyone who ran. His jaw tightened. My son was 3 summers old. Sarah's hand moved instinctively to her belly. I'm so sorry. I was away, scouting new hunting grounds with other warriors. When we returned, he touched another scratch mark. My father led the defense. He died protecting the children. Some escaped, most did not. The shield seemed to grow heavier with each word, weighted by the souls it commemorated. Sarah found herself reaching out, her fingers hovering over the marks. May I? Running Wolf nodded. The buffalo hide felt smooth beneath her touch, its surface worn by years of sun and wind and grief. After, he continued, I hunted the Wasiku responsible, one by one, not for revenge, for justice. His eyes met hers. Like Wade's men, they thought they could kill without consequence. They were wrong. Is that why you helped me? Sarah asked. Because I'm another victim of their kind? No. Running Wolf lifted the shield, moonlight catching the feathers. I help you because you fight with honor, because your husband died protecting what was right, because your child deserves to be born into a world where justice still exists." He turned the shield, showing her a fresh mark she hadn't noticed before. "This one is for James. I added it the night I buried him." Tears blurred Sarah's vision. Since James's death, no one had acknowledged him as anything but a fool who'd refused to sell. No one had honored his sacrifice or marked his passing with ceremony. "The shield carries more than death," Running Wolf said gently. "See here, these lines flowing outward, they represent hope, new beginnings. The cycle of life continues, even after great loss." Sarah wiped her eyes. "Like my child." "Yes." His voice softened. "Morning Star was carrying our second child when—" He paused, pain flickering across his features. "I see her sometimes in my dreams, asking me not to let hatred poison my spirit. It was her greatest fear, that I would forget how to love in my quest for justice." "Have you?" Sarah asked. "Forgotten?" Running Wolf's gaze held hers in the deepening twilight. "I thought I had, until I saw you in your garden that morning, defending your home with nothing but courage and a revolver. You reminded me that strength comes in many forms." The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken possibilities. Then Sarah's child kicked, making her gasp. Without hesitation, Running Wolf steadied her with one hand, the other still holding his shield. "Your child is strong," he said, something like wonder in his voice, "like its mother." "And protected," Sarah replied softly, "like its father wanted." They stood together in the gathering darkness, the warrior shield between them. No longer just a record of death, but perhaps a promise of life to come. Above them, the first stars emerged, watching over soldier and widow, Cheyenne and settler, two souls bound by loss, yet reaching tentatively toward hope. The shield's feathers stirred in the evening breeze, whispering of endings and beginnings, of justice and healing, of hearts that might learn to love again, even in the shadow of so much grief. Dark clouds rolled across the Wyoming sky like a herd of angry buffalo, their bellies purple with coming rain. Sarah stood in her doorway, watching Running Wolf secure his horse in her small barn. Her fingers twisted the gold band on her left hand, a nervous habit since James's death, the metal worn smooth by months of worry. "Storm's going to be bad," she called out, her voice nearly lost in the rising wind. "You should wait it out inside." Running Wolf hesitated, cultural propriety warring with practical necessity. A crack of thunder decided for him, sending his horse nickering in distress. "I will watch from the porch," he said, closing the barn door against the first fat drops of rain. "Don't be ridiculous." Sarah touched her wedding ring again, drawing strength from it. "James would never forgive me if I left his daughter's protector to drown in a spring storm." Running Wolf's eyes flickered to her belly. "Daughter? Just a feeling." She stepped aside, making room in the doorway. "Come in before—" The rest of her words vanished in a deafening thunderclap. The storm broke like a dam bursting, sheets of rain turning the yard into instant mud. Running Wolf crossed the distance, in 3 long strides, bringing with him the scent of leather and prairie sage. Sarah's small cabin seemed to shrink with his presence. She busied herself lighting the oil lamp, aware of him standing just inside the door, watching her with that quiet intensity that made her skin prickle. "You should rest," he said, nodding toward her rocking chair. The child is fine." But she sat anyway, her back aching from the day's work. "Tell me about Cheyenne weather spirits. Surely they have stories about storms like this." Running Wolf moved to the window, his posture alert despite the casual conversation. "My people say great storms come when the thunder beings ride across the sky, fighting evil spirits." His voice took on the rhythm of storytelling. "Their arrows are lightning, their hoofbeats thunder." Sarah smiled, remembering James's love of native stories. Her fingers found her wedding ring again, but this time the memories brought comfort instead of pain. "Your ring," Running Wolf observed. "It speaks to you, in a way." Sarah held her hand up to the lamplight. James saved for months to buy it. Said a proper marriage needed a proper ring. I told him I didn't care about gold, but he insisted. Her throat tightened. The day they killed him, he'd just returned from selling our best horse. Said he had a surprise for me. Running. Wolf moved closer, interest sharpening his features. What kind of surprise? I never found out. Whatever it was, Wade's men took it when they... She broke off as a flash of lightning illuminated the cabin, followed instantly by explosive thunder. The lamp flickered, shadows dancing across the walls. Through the rain-streaked window, a different kind of flash caught Running Wolf's eye. He moved like a ghost, extinguishing the lamp in one fluid motion. "Riders," he whispered, "using the storm for cover." Sarah's heart leaped into her throat. In the sudden darkness, she could just make out moving shapes through the curtain of rain. Mounted figures, drawing closer. How many? 6, maybe 7. Running Wolf's bow appeared in his hands. "They think we're blind in the storm." Sarah reached for James's revolver, but Running Wolf caught her wrist. "No, the child. I can't just... Trust me." His hand moved. From her wrist to her shoulder, steady and warm. "Your husband's ring has protected you this long. Let my arrows protect you now." Another flash of lightning, closer this time. In its stark illumination, Sarah saw the riders more clearly. Wade's. Men rifles ready despite the rain. Her wedding ring felt heavy on her finger. James's final gift, a constant reminder of all she had to lose. But as she looked at Running Wolf, outlined against the storm-dark window with his bow drawn, she realized something else. That ring wasn't just a reminder of loss. It was a symbol of love's obligation to protect, to stand against darkness, no matter the cost. Just as James had done, just as Running Wolf was doing now. The storm raged outside, thunder and lightning transforming the night into chaos. But in the darkness of her cabin, Sarah felt an unexpected calm settle over her. She touched her wedding ring one last time, then reached for Running Wolf's medicine pouch, still hanging at her belt. Whatever came next, she would face it with both symbols of protection, her past and her present, joined together in the heart of the storm. The morning after the storm dawned clear and cold, the air washed clean of everything but possibility. Sarah found Running Wolf on her porch, his knife moving with practiced precision across a piece of cedar wood. Shavings curled around his feet. "Like autumn leaves." "You're bleeding," she said, noticing the bandage on his arm for the first time. "From last night?" A scratch. He continued carving, each stroke revealing more of the form taking shape beneath his hands. "Wade's men shoot poorly in the rain." Sarah lowered herself onto the porch step beside him, close enough to see what he was creating, a small horse, its lines flowing with suggested motion. "It's beautiful for the child." Running Wolf's knife found the curve of the horse's neck, releasing its grace from the wood. "In my culture, a baby's first gift should carry meaning. Horses represent freedom, strength." He paused, studying his work. "And the power to carry us away from danger when needed." The weight of his words settled over Sarah like a blanket. She watched his hands move, remembering how those same fingers had loosed arrows in the darkness, driving back Wade's men when thunder and fear had threatened to overwhelm her. "Why did they really kill James?" she asked suddenly. "It wasn't just about the ranch, was it?" Running Wolf's knife stilled. "No, the gold mine." Sarah withdrew the blood-stained deed from her pocket. "But not the one everyone knows about. There's another, isn't there? That's what James found. That's what he was going to tell me." "Yes." Running Wolf set aside his carving, turning to face her fully. "Your husband discovered it while tracking a lost calf. A cave in the high canyon, where the creek bends north, rich with gold, but on Cheyenne's sacred land." "How do you know this?" "Because I showed it to him." Running Wolf's expression held both pride and sadness. He was different from other Wasiku. He understood its significance, agreed it should remain untouched. Sarah's hand moved to her belly, pieces falling into place. That's why he wouldn't sell, not just for the ranch, but to protect your people's sacred place, and Wade learned of it somehow. Running Wolf's fingers traced the carved horse's mane. Men like him, they see only the gold, not the spirits that guard it, not the prayers buried in that ground, or the lives they destroy to get it, Sarah's voice cracked. The horse in Running Wolf's hands seemed to ripple with morning light, its wooden muscles straining toward freedom. James died protecting something greater than himself, Running Wolf said softly. Just as my people died protecting our sacred ways. He lifted the carving, studying how sunlight played across its surfaces. This horse carries both our stories now. A gift to remind your child that courage knows no boundaries. Sarah reached out, her fingers brushing his as she touched the carving. The wood felt warm, alive with possibility. What do we do now? Wade will not stop. The gold blinds him to everything else. Then we make our stand. Sarah's voice found its strength, not just for James or the ranch, for your people's sacred ground, for everything that matters more than gold. Running Wolf's eyes met hers, something shifting in their depths. He pressed the carved horse into her hands, his fingers lingering against her palm. Together, he asked, the word carrying weight beyond its single syllable. Together. Sarah cradled the carving, feeling her child move beneath her heart. James would want that. Would Morning Star? Running Wolf's breath caught at his wife's name, but when he spoke, his voice held certainty. She would understand that hearts, like sacred places, must sometimes be protected by new guardians. The morning sun climbed higher, setting the dew-washed world ablaze with promise. Sarah held the carved horse between them, a bridge between cultures, a token of trust earned through shared purpose and growing affection. In its flowing lines, she saw everything that stood to be lost or saved. Heritage, honor, hope. And in Running Wolf's eyes, she saw a future she hadn't dared imagine. Since James's death, a future worth fighting for. The knife lay between them on the kitchen table, its bone handle yellowed with age, its blade etched with symbols that caught the afternoon light. Sarah watched Running Wolf sharpen it with slow, deliberate strokes of his whetstone. "My father's blade," he said, testing its edge with his thumb. He called it Truth Speaker, said a warrior's knife should never lie about its purpose. A sharp pain lanced through Sarah's abdomen, stronger than before. She gripped the table's edge, trying to hide her discomfort, but Running Wolf's eyes missed. "Nothing, the child? Just tired." But another spasm made her gasp. "The doctor in town said I should rest more." Running Wolf set down his blade, concern darkening his features. "Then you should—" Gunfire shattered the moment. A window exploded inward, showering them with glass. Running Wolf moved like lightning, pulling Sarah down behind the heavy oak table as more shots splintered the cabin's walls. "Wade?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "8 riders." Running Wolf's voice was steady as he retrieved his knife. "They're not playing games this time." Sarah reached for James's revolver, but pain doubled her over. This time she couldn't hide it. Running Wolf's expression shifted from warrior to something else entirely. "The baby is coming." Sarah gritted her teeth. "Bad timing." A voice boomed from outside. "Mrs. Mitchell, final chance to be reasonable." Wade's false charm had vanished, replaced by cold certainty. "There's nowhere left to run." Running Wolf's hand found Sarah's, squeezing once. "Stay down." He moved to the window in a crouch, Truth Speaker gleaming in his grip. "They don't know I'm here. Maybe—" Hoofbeats thundered closer. Something heavy slammed against the cabins. Dugur. Sarah's world narrowed to percussion, gunshots splintering wood, her own heartbeat, her child choosing now of all moments to fight its way into the world. Running Wolf's knife flashed in the chaos. A scream from outside told her he'd found his mark, but more shots followed, more voices. They were surrounded. "The tunnel," Sarah gasped between contractions. "Under the root cellar. James dug it last summer. Leads to the creek." Understanding. dawned in Running Wolf's eyes. But before he could move, the door burst inward. Wade himself stood framed in the opening, rifle raised. What happened next seemed to unfold in heartbeats. Beat! Running Wolf's knife, spinning through the air, striking. Wade's rifle hand. The weapon discharged harmlessly into the ceiling as Wade howled. Beat! Sarah's revolver barking twice, driving back the men trying to follow their boss through the door. Beat! Running Wolf moving like a spirit of vengeance, Truth Speaker back, in his grip, clearing the doorway as Sarah struggled to stand. Beat! Pain unlike anything she'd known, dropping her back to her knees. "Sarah!" Running Wolf's voice cut through the haze of agony. He was beside her again, strong arms lifting her. "Where?" She pointed shakily toward the root cellar's trapdoor, partly hidden by her mother's old rug. Behind them, Wade's cursing grew, a louder mixed with the sound of his men regrouping. Running Wolf kicked the rug aside, somehow managing to open the trapdoor while holding her. Darkness gaped below. Sarah clutched his shirt as pain wrapped around her middle like iron bands. "The knife," she gasped. "Your father's will taste blood again." He settled her into his arms more securely. "But your life matters more than steel." Shots peppered the cabin's walls. Running Wolf shielded her with his body as he descended. The ladder one-handed, somehow maintaining his grip on both her and Truth Speaker. The tunnel was low and dark, forcing him to crouch. Sarah's fingers found the knife's handle, pressed between them. Even through her pain, she felt the symbols carved into the bone, generations of warriors' wisdom now protecting both of them. "They'll follow," she managed between contractions. "Yes." Running Wolf's voice rumbled in his chest. "But first they must find us. And then," Truth Speaker's blade caught what little light filtered down from above. "Then they will learn why my father named his knife as he did." Sarah buried her face against his neck as another contraction seized her. She felt his pulse against her cheek, steady and strong, felt her child moving within her, demanding entry into a world suddenly full of violence and uncertainty. But she also felt the warrior's knife between them, its ancient symbols pressing into her palm like a promise. A promise that some things, honor, courage, love, spoke truth stronger than bullets or greed. Her daughter would be born into battle, but she would be born protected by both Truth Speaker's steel and its bearer's heart. The tunnel stretched, ahead into darkness, as Running Wolf carried her toward an uncertain dawn. Moonlight filtered through the canyon walls as Running Wolf withdrew a weathered deerskin map from his medicine bag. Its surface was soft with age, marked with symbols in faded pigments that seemed to shift in the darkness. Sarah watched through, a haze of pain, as his fingers traced paths only he could read. "The old ones marked safe passages," he murmured, supporting her as another contraction hit. Ways hidden from Wasakyu eyes. They had emerged from the tunnel at the creek's edge hours ago, just as dawn was breaking. Now night was falling again, and Sarah's labor was progressing faster than either had hoped. Behind them, Wade's men crashed. Through the underbrush, their cursing carried on the evening wind. "Here," Running Wolf indicated a symbol that looked like interwoven spirals. "A sacred cave. My people used it for generations when mothers couldn't reach the village in time." Sarah gripped his arm as pain wrapped around her middle. "How far?" "Close, but—" He hesitated, studying her face in the fading light. "It lies on holy ground. Few outsiders have ever been permitted." "I understand," Sarah gasped. "If it's forbidden?" "No." Running Wolf's voice was gentle but firm. "The spirits know your heart, and your child." His hand covered hers, where it rested on her belly. "This child is born of two worlds, like the prophecies speak of. Perhaps this is why the old ones marked these paths." He helped her to her feet, one arm supporting her weight, while the other held the ancient map. The deerskin seemed to glow faintly in the gathering darkness, its symbols more than mere marks now. They were lifelines, bridges between worlds. "The cave marks the boundary," Running Wolf explained as they moved carefully through the shadows. Beyond it lies the valley of our ancestors. The gold mine Wade seeks is there, in the heart of sacred land. Sarah stumbled, pain stealing her breath. James knew this? Yes. When I showed him the cave's markings, he understood. Running Wolf's voice held, remembered respect. He said some places should remain untouched. Some treasures are worth more than gold. A shot rang out, closer than before. Running Wolf pulled Sarah behind a boulder, shielding her with his body. The map pressed between them, its surface warm despite the cool night air. "They're following our trail," Sarah whispered between contractions. "No." Running Wolf's eyes held fierce certainty. "They follow their own greed. We follow the Old One's wisdom." He indicated another symbol on the map, a series of dots forming a curved line. "See, the Mother's Path, created for times like this, when new life must be protected." Sarah traced the symbol with trembling fingers. Her touch left a faint shimmer in its wake, or perhaps it was just moonlight playing tricks. "Your people have thought of everything. Our people planned for 7 generations ahead." Running Wolf helped her up again. "Tonight, perhaps those plans include you." They moved deeper into the canyon, following marks that seemed to appear and fade like stars. The map grew warmer in Running Wolf's hands, as if responding to their need, or perhaps responding to the child, whose insistent pressure told Sarah they had little time left. The moon climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the ancient walls. Sarah's world narrowed to rhythm, the pattern of her breathing, the timing of contractions, the steady support of Running Wolf's arm around her waist. Behind them, Wade's men's voices grew fainter, as if the very land conspired to mislead them. There, Running Wolf's voice held reverence. A dark opening gaped in the canyon wall, marked by symbols that matched those on the deerskin map. "The Mother's Cave!" Sarah sagged against him as another contraction gripped her. Through tears of pain, she saw the map's symbols begin to glow. With a soft, blue-white light, Running Wolf showed no surprise, as if he had expected this. "The Old Ones welcome you," he said softly. "They recognize a warrior's heart, no matter its origin." As if in response, the symbols on the cave's entrance flickered with the same ethereal light. Sarah felt something shift inside her. Not just the baby, but something deeper. A sense of belonging, of acceptance. Running Wolf guided her toward the cave, the ancient map lighting their way. Behind them, Wade's men's voices had fallen silent, as if they couldn't, or weren't meant to, see this sacred place. "Your daughter," Running Wolf said, helping her cross the threshold, "will be born on holy ground, protected by both her father's courage and her mother's strength, and by spirits older than any of us." The map's light grew stronger as they entered the cave, illuminating walls marked with thousands of years of prayers and promises. Sarah felt her child shift again, ready now, ready to enter a world where ancient wisdom and new love could forge a path even through the darkest night. Inside the sacred cave, Sarah leaned against a smooth rock wall, her breath coming in short gasps. Running Wolf knelt beside her, arranging his blanket to make her more comfortable. As he did, something fluttered from its folds, a worn photograph that landed face up in the cave's ethereal light. Sarah's eyes widened. "Where did you get that?" The image showed 3 men in military uniforms, arms around each other's shoulders. One was unmistakably James, younger but with the same gentle eyes. Another was Wade, his face unlined by greed and hatred. The third, "My brother," Running Wolf said quietly, picking up the photograph. "Walking Bear. He served with them in the war." Another contraction seized Sarah before she could respond. Running Wolf supported her through it, but his eyes never left the photograph. James never mentioned. Sarah managed when the pain subsided. "No." Walking Bear asked him not to. Running Wolf's voice held old grief. They were scouts together, brothers in arms, until the day Walking Bear discovered something that changed everything. The cave's light seemed to dim, As if responding to the weight of memory, Sarah touched the photograph with trembling fingers. The gold mine. Walking Bear was the first to find it. He recognized the sacred signs, knew what the place meant to our people. Running Wolf's jaw tightened. He trusted his brothers in arms with the secret, asked them to help protect it. Understanding dawned through Sarah's pain. James agreed. Yes. But Wade, Running Wolf's fingers traced his brother's image. Wade saw only fortune. When Walking Bear refused to reveal the mine's location, Wade, he couldn't finish. That's why you were watching our ranch, Sarah whispered. You knew James was protecting your brother's secret. The photograph was in Walking Bear's effects, along with a letter explaining everything. Running Wolf carefully tucked the image away. When I learned Wade was pressuring your husband, I knew history was repeating itself. But I was too late to save James. Sarah grabbed his arm as another contraction hit, stronger than before. When she could speak again, her voice was fierce. You're not too late. James died protecting your people's sacred place. Now we protect it together. A sound echoed from the cave's entrance, boots on stone. Running Wolf moved like a shadow, truth speaker appearing in his hand. Wade's voice carried through the darkness. Found your trail, Mrs. Mitchell. Quite a chase you've led. Odds on. Sarah tried to stifle her groan as another contraction seized her. Running Wolf pressed his hand over hers, both of them knowing silence was impossible now. Bringing a child into this world. Wade's tone held mock concern. Dangerous business, out here in the wild. Why don't you let us help? For old time's sake. The photograph seemed to burn in Running Wolf's pocket, a reminder of brotherhood betrayed, of how quickly trust could turn to treachery. James told me about you, Sarah called out, her voice stronger than she felt. About Walking Bear, about what you did to him. Silence stretched for a moment. When Wade spoke again, all pretense of friendliness was gone. James should have kept his mouth shut. Like your red friend's brother. Running Wolf's grip tightened. On Truth Speaker, Sarah could feel rage emanating from him in waves, but his voice was deadly calm. You murdered 2 good men over gold you will never touch. 3 good men, soon enough. Wade's footsteps drew closer. Or did you think I wouldn't recognize Walking Bear's little brother? I never forget a face. Especially one that needs killing. Sarah's water broke then, the sound of it echoing off stone walls. Her cry of pain bounced back at them, multiplied by the cave's acoustics. Running Wolf's free hand found hers in the darkness. Your child comes, he whispered, and with it a choice. The old ones say, every birth brings new chances for justice or vengeance. Which path we take, no choice, Sarah gasped. James chose justice. Walking Bear chose justice. We honor them both. The photograph pressed between them as Running Wolf helped her deeper into the cave, away from Wade's approaching footsteps. Its presence was a testament to bonds formed and broken, to the thin line between brotherhood and betrayal. But it was also a reminder that some loyalties transcended death. Some promises, like the one growing within her, demanded protection at any cost. Wade's men fanned out behind their leader, weapons ready. But in the sacred darkness of the mother's cave, surrounded by ancient prayers and modern courage, Sarah felt something stronger than fear. Her daughter was coming, and with her the chance to prove that love for family, for land, for honor would always triumph over greed. The cave's ethereal light flickered like stars as Sarah prepared to bring new life into a world balanced between darkness and dawn. Running Wolf's fingers closed around the small leather pouch hanging from his neck, a tracking charm passed down through generations of Cheyenne hunters. Inside, sacred herbs and a wolf's tooth whispered ancient secrets of pursuit and evasion. There are other passages, he murmured, guiding Sarah deeper into the cave network. The charm will show us the way. How? Sarah's question ended in a stifled cry as another contraction hit. It grows warm, when we approach paths blessed by the spirits. His free hand supported her, while the other clutched the charm. Cold when danger lurks. Behind them, Wade's voice echoed off stone walls. "You can't hide forever, Mrs. Mitchell. This maze will become your tomb." The charm pulsed with heat against Running Wolf's chest as they reached a fork in the passage. Left tunnel felt wrong. The pouch grew cool, despite the warmth of Sarah's labor-soaked skin. But the right... This way. He helped her toward the passage where the charm burned hottest. "The old ones guide us." Sarah stumbled, caught herself against the cave wall. "The baby. She's coming fast now." "Then we must be faster." Running Wolf lifted the charm to his lips, whispering in Cheyenne. "Our ancestors understood that sometimes the hunter must become the hunted. They left signs for such moments. As if in response, the tracking charm's heat intensified. In its leather confines, the wolf's tooth seemed to shift, pointing deeper into the darkness. A shot rang out, stone chips exploding near their heads. Sarah instinctively curled around her belly as Running Wolf pulled her behind a boulder. "Found." "You!" Wade's triumphant voice bounced through the cavern. "No more running, Mrs. Mitchell. Time to finish what we started with James." The tracking charm grew ice-cold. Running Wolf felt Sarah tense beside him as another contraction began. "The baby," she gasped. "I can't—" "You can." He pressed the charm into her hand. "Feel its power. The spirits themselves guide your daughters. Path into this world." Sarah's fingers closed around the pouch just as Wade's men's footsteps grew closer. But something was happening. The charm's heat returned, stronger than before, spreading up her arm and through her body. Running Wolf's eyes widened as he saw the cave walls around them begin to shimmer with that same ethereal light from before. The tracking charm pulsed in rhythm with Sarah's labor, each beat seeming to illuminate another hidden passage. "Impossible," one of Wade's men whispered. "These tunnels weren't here before." The charm burned brighter. Running Wolf understood. Suddenly, the old ones weren't just guiding them. They were changing the very paths beneath their feet. "Sarah," his voice held urgent purpose, "the charm shows the true way, but you must choose to trust it completely." She met his eyes through her pain, understanding. This was more than escape now. This was about faith, in the spirits, in each other, in the child fighting to enter a world balanced between two cultures. "I trust you," she whispered. "I trust them." The tracking charm flared with blinding heat. Sarah cried out, but not from pain, from wonder. For a moment, she saw the caves as Running Wolf did, alive with power, marked with generations of prayers and protection. "No!" Wade's shout held fury and fear as the passages began to shift. "Shoot them, shoot!" But his words were lost in the sound of stone grinding against stone. The tracking charm pulled them forward as walls flowed like water, sealing old paths and opening new ones. Sarah's labor pains took on a different rhythm, matching the pulse of the charm, the beat of ancient drums only they could hear. Running Wolf supported her through the transforming tunnels, following the heat that grew stronger with each step. "The spirits guide us," he murmured, just as they guided Walking Bear and James after him. Behind them, Wade's curses turned to confusion, then panic, as his men found themselves in passages that led nowhere, facing walls where moments before there had been openings. The tracking charm burned like a star against Sarah's palm as another contraction seized her. But this time the pain felt different, purposeful, directed. Her daughter wasn't just coming into the world. She was helping to reshape it. There, Running Wolf pointed ahead where the charm's heat indicated. "The birthing chamber. The old ones have led us home." Sarah looked back once at the maze of changed passages, then forward to where new life waited. The tracking charm hummed with power and promise, reminding her that some pursuits led not to capture, but to freedom. The birthing chamber glowed with soft blue light as Running Wolf unfolded his grandmother's blanket, a masterwork of Cheyenne weaving, its patterns telling stories of winter spirits and spring renewal. He draped it gently around Sarah's shoulders, As she knelt in the ancient birthing position, her face gleaming with sweat, "This blanket has welcomed 5 generations of my family into the world," he said, adjusting it to cover her. "The patterns are prayers, woven into every thread." Sarah's fingers traced the intricate designs between contractions. "What do they say?" "This one speaks of endurance." Running Wolf touched a zigzag pattern near her heart. "And this, protection. The winter spirits guard new life most fiercely." Another contraction seized her. Sarah gripped the blanket's edges, its wool soft yet strong beneath her fingers. Through the pain, she felt something else. A warmth that went deeper than physical. Comfort, as if each woven prayer was coming alive against her skin. "Wade's men," she gasped when she could speak again, "are lost in the maze the spirits created." Running Wolf checked the chamber's entrance anyway, Truth Speaker ready at his belt. "But we must hurry. Even sacred protection has limits." Distant shouts echoed through the tunnel network, followed by sporadic gunfire. The blanket seemed to pulse in response, its patterns shifting slightly in the ethereal light. "The baby's coming fast now." Sarah's voice held both fear and determination. "I don't know if I can." "You can." Running Wolf knelt beside her. "One, hand on the blanket's edge. Feel the strength in these threads. My grandmother wove them during the hardest winter our people had faced in generations. Game was scarce, illness stalked the lodges, but she kept weaving, kept praying." Sarah let out a cry as another contraction ripped through her. The blanket's warmth intensified, and suddenly she could see it. A white-haired woman bent over, her loom in a snowbound lodge, whispering prayers into each pass of the shuttle. "Weaving protection for children not yet born." "She knew," Sarah whispered through tears of pain and understanding. "Your grandmother knew this blanket would be needed, here, now." Running Wolf's eyes held ancient wisdom. The old ones see far. "Perhaps she saw you, saw this moment when 2 worlds would join in new life." A shot rang out closer than before, making them both tense. But the blanket's warmth never faltered. "Tell me," Sarah managed between pains, needing distraction. "Tell me about the other patterns." Running Wolf's fingers traced the designs as he spoke, his voice taking on the rhythm of a storyteller. "Here are the wolf tracks, marking safe paths through winter storms. Here the morning star, Morning Star's namesake, guiding travelers home." Sarah focused on his words, on the blanket's embrace, as her body worked to bring her daughter into the world. Each pattern seemed to pulse with its own life now. Wolf tracks glowing with protection, morning star brightening with hope. "Done. Snowflake pattern," Running Wolf continued, touching a complex design near her shoulder, "speaks of beauty born from hardship. Each flake unique, yet part of something greater." Like her daughter would be, Sarah thought. Unique in all the world, yet connected to both her parents' peoples, to all who had come before. Another contraction, stronger than any before. Sarah cried out, and the blanket's patterns flared with sudden brilliance. Running Wolf steadied her. As she bore down, his grandmother's weaving, encompassing them both in its protective embrace. "They're getting closer," she gasped when the pain eased slightly. As if in response, the blanket's wolf track pattern began to glow brighter than the others. Running Wolf's expression shifted to one of wonder. "The winter spirits speak through." "The weaving," he said softly. "They will hold Wade's men at bay until the child arrives." Sarah had no time to marvel at this. The next contraction came like a tide, unstoppable. The blanket's warmth surrounded her completely now, each pattern adding its strength to hers. Through the haze of labor, she felt Running Wolf's support, heard his grandmother's prayers echoing through time, woven into every fiber of the fabric that sheltered her. "Your daughter comes," Running Wolf murmured, "born under the protection of 2 peoples, wrapped in prayers older than memory." The blanket's patterns danced with light as Sarah gathered herself for the final push. Somewhere in the tunnel maze, Wade and his men searched in vain. But here in this sacred space, beneath a weaving that bridged generations, a new life prepared to enter the world. Sarah gripped Running Wolf's hand through the blanket's folds, their fingers intertwining like the threads that held them safe. Together, they waited for the moment when all the woven prayers would find their answer in a newborn's first cry. In the flickering light of the birthing chamber, Running Wolf drew the sacred paint across his features with practiced strokes. The mixture of red ochre and bear fat felt cool against his skin, each line connecting him to generations of warriors who had stood between their people and harm. Sarah watched between contractions, the ceremonial blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. What do the markings mean? Each has its purpose. Running Wolf drew 2 diagonal lines across his cheeks, deep red against copper skin. These for protection, these, he traced lightning patterns on his forehead, for swift action, and this, a single line down his chin, for truth. In battle, a drumbeat echoed through the cave system, making them both freeze, but Running Wolf's expression shifted from tension to fierce joy. "The sister drums," he said, reaching for his weapons. "My people come." Another contraction seized Sarah before she could respond. When it passed, the drumming had grown stronger, mixing with the sounds of confusion from Wade's men. "How?" she managed. "How did they know?" Running Wolf touched the war paint container, its surface carved with ancient symbols. The paint itself is a signal. When a warrior draws these marks in sacred places, the spirits carry the message to those who need to hear it. More drums joined. The first, their rhythm speaking of urgency and power. Running Wolf continued applying the paint, each mark transformed from mere pigment to symbol of defiance. "My father wore these marks the day he died, protecting our children," he said, voice tight with memory. Walking Bear wore them when he refused to reveal the mine's location to Wade. Sarah reached out, her fingers hovering near a spiral pattern, at his temple. "And now you wear them for your child, for justice, for all that stands between greed and sacred ground." The drums grew louder. Shouts of alarm rose from Wade's men, followed by the sound of horses and warriors' cries. Running Wolf's paint seemed to gleam with its own inner fire as he helped Sarah through another contraction. "Your people," she gasped, "will hold them back until the child comes." He touched the lightning pattern on his forehead. "These marks call for swift victory. The spirits honor such prayers, especially when new life hangs in the balance." A shot rang out, followed by the distinctive sound of arrows finding their marks. The war paint's red ochre caught the cave's ethereal light, making the protection symbols appear to move on Running Wolf's skin. "James would be grateful," Sarah whispered, fighting through her pain, knowing his daughter will be born under such protection. Running Wolf's painted features softened. Walking Bear, too, would be proud to see his brother standing where he once stood, defending what matters most. The drums changed rhythm. Faster now, speaking of battle joined and honor defended. Running Wolf drew the final mark, a shield symbol over his heart, just as Sarah's strongest contraction yet made her cry out. "They're coming!" Wade's voice carried through the tunnels, edged with desperation. "The savages are in the caves!" "No," Running Wolf said, rising to his full height, war paint transforming him into something ancient and powerful. "We were always here, waiting, watching, protecting." Sarah grabbed his hand as another contraction built. The paint felt cool against her fevered skin, its power somehow lending her strength. "Go," she managed. "Your people need their warrior." Running Wolf touched his painted forehead to hers in a gesture of profound tenderness. "They have their warrior. But first, he must ensure a new life enters this world safely." As if in response, the drums rose to a crescendo. Through the cave's twisting passages came the sound of hooves, of arrows, of justice, long delayed, finally finding its mark. The war paint seemed to pulse with each beat, each symbol burning with sacred purpose. Running Wolf stood between Sarah and the tunnel entrance, painted features set in lines of determination that echoed every warrior who had ever stood guard over new life. The battle lines were drawn, not just between people, but between greed and honor, between those who would destroy sacred things and those who would defend them to their last breath. And, in the birthing chamber, beneath Running Wolf's protective gaze, a child prepared to enter a world where ancient paint still held power, where drums still called warriors to defend what was right, where two cultures could join to create something new and precious and worth any fight to protect. From his medicine bag, Running Wolf withdrew a small deerskin bundle tied with sinew and decorated with intricate beadwork. His grandmother had prepared it the night before her death, saying only that it would be needed when new life and old ways met in sacred space. "A blessing bundle," he explained, placing it near Sarah's head, "for protection during birth." Sarah's next contraction came before she could respond, more powerful than any before. The bundle's beads caught the cave's ethereal light, chiming softly like distant bells. Outside, the battle raged. War cries echoed through stone passages, mixed with gunfire and the thunder of hooves in the larger caverns. But here, in this ancient birthing chamber, time seemed to move by different rules. "The child comes now," Running Wolf said, his war paint gleaming as he supported Sarah. "Let the bundle's medicine guide her path." Sarah bore down, crying out as her daughter fought to enter the world. The blessing bundle's ties began to loosen on their own, releasing the scent of sacred herbs and old magic into the air. Wade's reached the inner chambers. A warrior's warning rang out. "He's broken through!" Running Wolf's painted features hardened, but he didn't move from Sarah's side. "The blessing bundle will protect us, my grandmother's last gift." The bundle opened further, revealing its contents: an eagle feather, a white shell, strands of sweetgrass, and something that made Sarah gasp between pains, a small gold nugget. "From the sacred mine," Running Wolf confirmed. "Walking Bear gave it to my grandmother before he died. Said it belonged in blessing hands, not greedy ones." Another contraction seized Sarah. The bundle's contents began to glow with the same light that filled the cave, each item adding its power to the ancient space. "Push," Running Wolf urged, his voice steady despite the approaching sounds of battle. "Your daughter chooses her moment well. Even Wade cannot violate the sacred act of birth." Sarah gathered her strength, feeling the bundle's power join with her own. The eagle feather spoke of freedom, the shell of persistence, the sweetgrass of purification, and the gold. The gold spoke of sacrifice and redemption. "James," she gasped. "I see him." The bundle opens the way between worlds at moments like this. Running Wolf's war paint seemed to shift in the growing light. The spirits gather to welcome new life. A shot splintered stone near the chamber's entrance. Wade's voice carried through the darkness. "Found you at last." But something was happening. The blessing bundle's contents had begun to spin slowly in the air, forming a circle of light around Sarah. Running Wolf's paint glowed brighter, his grandmother's prayers merging with the bundle's power. "One more push," he said as Sarah cried out. "Your daughter comes to change everything." Sarah bore down one final time as Wade appeared in the entrance, rifle raised. The blessing bundle flared like a star, and in that moment of light and shadow, life and death, a baby's first cry rang out through the sacred chamber. Wade's rifle finger tightened on the trigger, but he froze at the sound. The blessing bundle's contents swooped through the air, eagle feather brushing the child's forehead, shell catching her first tears, sweetgrass purifying her breath, and the gold nugget pulsing with righteous power. "No," Wade whispered, his weapon lowering. "It can't be." For there, in the light of ancient magic and new life, stood Walking Bear. His spirit form was translucent but undeniable, painted with the same symbols Running Wolf now wore. Beside him materialized James, ghostly hands reaching toward his newborn. "O daughter," the blessing bundle's power had indeed opened the way between worlds. Running Wolf wrapped the baby in his grandmother's ceremonial blanket, his war paint mixing with tears of joy. "A daughter," he announced to all present, living and spirit alike, born of two worlds, protected by both. Wade stumbled back, his face pale. More warriors appeared behind him, arrows nocked, but they lowered their weapons at the sight of the spirits and the newborn. Sarah held her daughter close as the blessing bundle's contents settled gently around them. Walking Bear and James nodded once to their brothers, one by blood, one by bond, before fading from view. But their presence lingered in the bundle's scattered elements, the eagle feather promising freedom from hatred, the shell offering strength through change, the sweetgrass ensuring pure intentions, and the gold nugget remaining as proof that some treasures were worth more than mere wealth. "Her name," Sarah said softly, as peace settled over the chamber, "is Dawn." Running Wolf touched his painted forehead to the child's, completing the circle of protection. "Dawn," he repeated, "born where night meets morning, where death meets life, where old hatred gives way to new hope." The blessing bundle's work was complete, and in its wake, even Wade understood that some battles ended not with violence, but with the cry of a child born under sacred signs. In the great council chamber of the cave system, the justice stone sat centered on its ancient pedestal. Black as night and smooth as water, its surface reflected the torchlight, like a mirror of truth. For generations, the Cheyenne had brought their most difficult decisions before it, believing the stone could see into men's hearts. Wade knelt before it now, no longer the proud antagonist, but a man broken by spirit visions. His remaining men had been disarmed, surrounded by warriors whose arrows remained ready despite the peace of the birthing chamber. Running Wolf stood beside the stone, his war paint still bright. Sarah sat nearby in a makeshift chair, baby Dawn, sleeping peacefully in her arms. "The old ones say this stone has been here since the first dreams," Running Wolf explained, touching its surface. "That it drinks, lies, and reflects only truth." The stone seemed to ripple beneath his fingers, its surface shifting like dark water. Wade stared at it, transfixed. "I've seen enough magic today," he whispered. "Walking Bear, James, their spirits came to protect the child," Running Wolf said. "But justice remains for the living." Sarah shifted Dawn in her arms, studying the man who had caused so much pain. "Why, Wade? You were their brother in arms, their friend." The justice stone's surface swirled as Wade struggled with his answer. In its depths, images began to form, younger versions of the three soldiers, their brotherhood still untainted by greed. "The war changed me," Wade finally said, his voice hollow. "Changed all of us. But Walking Bear, he found purpose in protecting the sacred. James, too, while I—" "You let the gold poison your spirit," Running Wolf finished. The stone's surface showed another image, Wade standing over Walking Bear's body, horror on his face even as he reached for the map his friend had died protecting. "I never meant—" Wade's voice broke. "It wasn't supposed to end in death." The justice stone's surface darkened, rejecting the lie. Wade flinched. "Speak truth before the stone," Running Wolf commanded, "or remain silent." Wade's shoulders sagged. I knew Walking Bear would never give up the mine's location, knew James would choose honor over profit. I killed them both for gold I couldn't even find." The stone's surface cleared, accepting the truth. Sarah held Dawn closer, feeling the weight of the moment. "The stone calls for justice," one of the tribal elders announced. "Blood for blood, as our laws demand." But Running Wolf raised his hand. "The old laws are clear, but so is the blessing bundle's message. Dawn's birth opens the way for new beginnings." He looked at Wade. "If the murderer is willing to make right what he has broken." The justice stone's surface began to glow softly, showing one final image, the sacred mine, its entrance marked with prayers and offerings. "The mine will be sealed," Running Wolf declared, "its gold left as an offering to the spirits. Wade will sign over his claims to all surrounding lands, returning them to the Cheyenne nation. And my men?" Wade asked, broken but still concerned for his followers. "Will face the white man's law for their crimes," Sarah said firmly. "But you will do more." She stood carefully, bringing Dawn close to the justice stone. The baby's presence made its surface shimmer with unprecedented light. "You will live," Sarah continued. "Live with the knowledge of what you destroyed. Live to see this child grow strong under the protection of two peoples. Live to watch the land you killed for remain forever untouched." The justice stone flared brighter. Accepting her words as righteous judgment, Wade bowed his head, tears finally breaking through his hardened exterior. "Walking Bear would have wanted mercy," Running Wolf said softly. "James, too. They understood that hate only breeds more hate." The stone's light illuminated the chamber fully now, touching each face with its ancient wisdom. Dawn stirred in her. Blanket, tiny fingers reaching toward its glow. "So be it," the tribal elder declared. "Let the justice stone witness this verdict. Let it remember that on this day, wisdom prevailed over vengeance, and a new path was chosen." Wade's men were led away as he signed the documents the elder produced. Land deeds, confessions, promises sealed with more than mere ink. The justice stone watched it all, its surface now calm and clear as a mountain pool. Dawn's first laugh echoed through the chamber just then, a sound of pure joy that made even the hardened warriors smile. The stone's surface caught the sound and transformed it into ripples of light, as if to remind them all that justice, true justice, should serve life rather than death. The reckoning was complete, and in its wake, healing could finally begin. The new land grant lay unfolded on Sarah's kitchen table, its crisp parchment and official seals a stark contrast to the blood-stained deed it replaced. 2 weeks had passed since Dawn's birth in the sacred cave, and spring had fully claimed the Wyoming Territory at last. Running Wolf stood beside Sarah, both of them studying the document's careful wording, in recognition of shared stewardship and sacred trust. The grant established a unique arrangement. The land would be held jointly by Sarah and the Cheyenne, people with special protections for the cave system and its surroundings. "The first of its kind," Sarah mused, touching the fresh ink. "A partnership instead of ownership, as it should be." Running Wolf's war paint was gone now, but its spirit of protection remained in his bearing. "The land owns itself. We are merely its guardians." Dawn cooed from her cradle nearby. Made from wood, Running Wolf had carved himself. The sound drew smiles from both of them. These moments of peace still felt precious and new. A knock at the door announced the arrival of Ellen from the bookstore, bearing a basket of fresh bread and vegetables. Since the events at the cave, the town's attitude had shifted. Where once there had been suspicion of Sarah's Cheyenne protector, now there was growing respect. "The whole town's talking about the land grant," Ellen said, setting down her basket. "Never seen anything like it. But then, never seen anything like what happened up in those caves either." Sarah and Running Wolf exchanged glances. Much of what had occurred, the spirits, the blessing bundle's power, the justice stone's wisdom, remained known only to those who had witnessed it. But the results were clear enough. Wade's confession and imprisonment, the return of sacred lands, and most importantly, the birth of a child who embodied hope for a different future. "We're planning a ceremony," Sarah said, lifting Dawn from her cradle, "to properly dedicate the land grant, both Cheyenne and settler traditions together." Ellen's eyes brightened. "The whole town will want to come. Already people are saying this could be a new beginning, a way to heal old wounds." "Some wounds take generations to heal," Running Wolf said quietly. But he touched the land grant with reverence. Still, every journey begins with a single step. More visitors arrived throughout the day, townspeople bringing gifts, Cheyenne elders offering blessings, even the territory judge who had officially witnessed the grant signing. Each one paused to admire the document that represented such unprecedented change. As the sun began to set, Sarah found Running Wolf on the porch, watching the last visitors depart. Dawn slept peacefully in his arms, one tiny hand curled around his finger. "Having second thoughts?" she asked, noting his pensive expression, thinking of Walking Bear, of James. He shifted Dawn gently. They died protecting the sacred. Now this paper does what their blood could not. Not just the paper, Sarah said softly. The people behind it. The choices we make now because of their sacrifice. Running Wolf nodded toward the land grant visible through the window. The old ones say true power lies not in possessing, but in protecting. This grant, it protects more than land. It protects possibility. As if to emphasize his words, distant drums began to sound from the direction of the caves. Not war drums this time, but healing songs, ancient rhythms of celebration and renewal. Listen, Running Wolf murmured to the sleeping Dawn. Your people sing welcome to this new day. Sarah leaned against the porch rail, feeling the weight of the moment. Which people? She asked. Cheyenne or settler? Running Wolf smiled, a rare full smile that transformed his warrior's face. Yes, he said simply. Inside, the land grant caught the last rays of sunset, its official seals gleaming like promises. But the real promise lay here on the porch, in a child of two worlds, in hearts learning to trust again, in the sound of healing drums calling all people to a new way of living. Tomorrow would bring challenges, they both knew. Change never came easily, especially change this profound. But the land grant represented more than just a legal agreement. It was a declaration that hatred and greed need not have the final word, that sacred things could be protected through wisdom rather than warfare, that love, in the end, was the strongest protection of all. Dawn stirred, opening eyes that held both her father's courage. Above them, the evening star emerged. Morning. Star's star, watching over this new family as they wrote their own story on the land that had brought them together. The cradle stood in the corner of Sarah's cabin, a masterpiece of two traditions merged into one. Its sturdy oak frame, carved by the town's woodworker, bore the clean lines of settler craft. But woven through the wood were Cheyenne symbols, protection signs. Running Wolf had carved himself, working late into the night while Dawn slept nearby. Running Wolf's grandmother's blanket lined the base, while Sarah's mother's lace draped the top. Hanging above it, James's compass and walking. Bear's medicine pouch kept watch together, their shadows mingling in the morning light. She sleeps better here than anywhere else, Sarah observed, watching Dawn's peaceful rest. At 3 months old, their daughter had her father's dark eyes and her mother's copper hair, a living bridge between worlds. The cradle holds the prayers of both peoples, Running Wolf said, adjusting the blanket. Like Dawn herself. Summer had painted the Wyoming Territory in wildflower colors, and through the open window came the sounds of both worlds learning to coexist. Children's laughter from the town, mixed with the rhythm of distant drums, wagon, wheels harmonizing with horse hooves on the new shared trails. The changes hadn't all been easy. Some townspeople still held to old prejudices, and some of Running Wolf's people remained wary of too much integration. But the cradle stood as proof that beauty could emerge from the blending of different ways. The tribal council meets today, Running Wolf reminded her, touching one of the protection symbols. To discuss the school. Sarah nodded, excitement warming her voice. Ellen's offered her old store space, books in both languages, teachers from both cultures. Her hand joined his on the cradle's frame. Dawn will learn all of her stories, as will others. Running Wolf's fingers traced the spot where Cheyenne symbols flowed into settler designs. The old ones say wisdom speaks many tongues. A knock at the door announced Ellen herself, carrying more books for the planned school. Her eyes went immediately to the cradle. John Miller's boy was asking about it yesterday, she said, setting down her burden. Wanted to know if his pa could learn to carve those symbols too. Said they were prettier than plain wood. Sarah smiled, remembering the Miller family's initial resistance to the changes. And what did his father say? Asked Running Wolf to teach him. Ellen's eyes twinkled. Never thought I'd see the day. Running Wolf lifted Dawn gently as she stirred, settling her against his chest. The baby clutched at his shirt with one hand and her mother's lace with the other, unconsciously bridging their worlds even in sleep. "The cradle teaches without words," he said softly. "Shows how strength comes from joining, not dividing." Sarah touched the compass above the cradle, James's last gift to her, now pointing the way to an unexpected future. "I wish they could see this," she whispered. "James and Walking Bear, they see." Running Wolf's voice held certainty. "The spirits watch over all new beginnings." As if in response, Dawn opened her eyes and smiled. That pure, perfect smile of the very young, untouched by prejudice or fear. In the cradle below her, the two styles of craftsmanship caught the morning light, neither diminished by the presence of the other. Ellen picked up one of the new books, stories from both traditions, carefully translated and bound together. "We're making history here," she said, wonder in her voice. "This cradle, this child, this way of living, we're remembering," Running Wolf corrected gently. "Remembering what the old ones knew, that circles are meant to widen, not close." Sarah watched her daughter reach for the medicine pouch, then the compass, playing with both equally. The cradle beneath her seemed to glow with its own light, each carved symbol and crafted joint speaking of possibility. The school would open soon. More mixed marriages were being celebrated. The sacred caves had been protected, not through force but through understanding. And here, in this cabin where once a widow had faced death alone, new life flourished under the watch of two traditions. Running Wolf laid Dawn back in her cradle, tucking the grandmother's blanket around her. The protection symbols he'd carved seemed to dance in the shifting light, interweaving with the settlers' solid craftsmanship like a promise made permanent in wood. "Every cradle is a bridge to the future," he said, wisdom in his voice. "But this one carries the dreams of generations." Sarah leaned against him, watching their daughter drift back to sleep beneath the joined shadows of compass and medicine pouch. The cradle held her safe, as it would hold others after her, children born into a world where wisdom could speak with many voices, and love knew no boundaries. 1 year after Dawn's birth in the sacred cave, Sarah stood before her mirror, fastening a unique medallion around her neck. Half of it was crafted from her grandmother's locket, the other half from Running Wolf's tribal medallion. The two pieces had been joined by the town's silversmith and a Cheyenne craftsman, working together, creating something entirely new from cherished pieces of the past. "It's time," Running Wolf said from the doorway. He wore a mixture of traditional Cheyenne garments and settler clothing, just as the medallion wore both cultures with equal pride. Sarah lifted Dawn, now walking on unsteady legs, into her arms. Their daughter reached immediately for the medallion, as fascinated by its merged beauty as everyone else who saw it. "The whole town's gathering," she said, following Running Wolf outside. "And your people are already at the caves." His voice held quiet pride. 1 year since the blessing bundle opened the way, 1 year of changes no one thought possible. They rode together toward the sacred caves, Running Wolf on his paint horse, Sarah and Dawn in the wagon Ellen drove. Other townspeople followed, mixing with Cheyenne families on horseback. The merged medallion caught the morning sun, throwing combined patterns of light across Dawn's fascinated face. At the cave entrance, the tribal elders waited. The justice stone had been moved here temporarily, its dark surface reflecting the gathered crowds. Settler and Cheyenne, once enemies, now sharing space and purpose. Running Wolf helped Sarah down, then lifted Dawn into his arms. The medallion's combined symbols aligned perfectly with the cave's ancient markings, old wisdom acknowledging new ways. 1 year ago, Sarah addressed the crowd, a child was born here in darkness, while hatred and fear ruled outside. Today, we gather in light, not to forget our differences, but to celebrate how they strengthen us together. The medallion caught the cave's ethereal glow as she spoke, its merged halves becoming something greater than their parts. just as the town and tribe had become something greater through their union. Running Wolf stepped forward, Dawn reaching, again for the medallion as he spoke. The old ones taught that circles must complete themselves. Today, we honor those who died protecting the sacred, walking bear, James Mitchell, by showing that their sacrifice bore fruit sweeter than any gold. The Justice Stone's surface rippled at his words, showing brief glimpses of the past year's changes. The new school where children of both peoples learned together, shared hunting parties bringing food to all families, ceremonies that honored both traditions. Sarah touched the medallion, feeling the seamless join between its halves. Today, we also announce that the sacred caves will become a place of learning, not just for our children, but for all who wish to understand the strength that comes from walking in two worlds. Dawn laughed then, a sound of pure joy that echoed through the caves. The merged medallion caught her laughter and transformed it into light, just as the blessing bundle had done on the day of her birth. The gathered people, Settler and Cheyenne, alike moved forward to touch the Justice Stone, each contact adding their commitment to this new way of living. Above them, the spirits of Walking Bear and James seemed to shimmer briefly in the cave's light, their approval felt, if not seen. Later, as the celebration continued outside, Sarah and Running Wolf stood at the cave's entrance. Dawn played nearby, watched over by Ellen and the tribal elders, her very existence a testament to love's power to transform. "The medallion carries both our stories now," Running Wolf said, touching its surface where it rested against Sarah's throat. "As Dawn carries both our bloods and our hopes," Sarah added, watching their daughter toddle between groups of children from both peoples, equally welcomed by all. The merged medallion caught the setting sun, its combined symbols throwing patterns of light across the cave walls. Like the carved cradle, like the shared land grant, like Dawn herself, it stood as proof that circles could widen without breaking, that traditions could merge without being lost. Above them, the evening star emerged, Morningstar's star, watching over this gathering as it had watched over so many changes. The medallion reflected its light, sending it back to the heavens like a promise kept, like a dream made real. Dawn ran back to them then, her small hands reaching for the medallion that told both her stories. Running Wolf lifted her up, and Sarah leaned into them both, feeling the weight of the past and the promise of the future in equal measure. The merged medallion rested between them, warm with shared body heat, bright with shared purpose. Like the sacred caves, like the blessed land, like love itself, it had become a bridge between worlds. Proof that the greatest treasures were never gold or land or power, but the courage to reach across boundaries and find family on the other side.